Yosemite National Park is famous for its breathtaking waterfalls and tall cliffs. People have lived there for thousands of years, including Native Americans and later explorers. The park is beautiful, but it also has some pretty strange mysteries surrounding it. Some hikers went into the park and just never came back. Today, we'll talk about the Yosemite National Park and the scary stories of people who've just straight up disappeared there. Yosemite National Park is in the Sierra Nevada mountains in California. It covers a huge area of 747,956 acres, and most of the park, about 95%, is protected wilderness. The park's landscape was shaped by glaciers millions of years ago, and as these glaciers moved over the rocks, this created the park's famous granite formations. The granite is very hard. It's like extremely hard rock, and granite formations in Yosemite are really some of the most famous in the world because they just don't really, get eroded away like pretty much all other rocks. But granite isn't the only rock in Yosemite. There are also igneous rocks, which are made from cooled lava. A long time ago, molten rock flowed from underground, cooled down, and then turned into quartz and other type of crystal rocks. But Yosemite isn't just about rocks, though. The park has beautiful canyons, clear lakes, stunning waterfalls, and amazing rock formations like peaks, domes, cliffs, and mountains. Every year, 3 to 4 million people visit Yosemite to see its natural beauty, and people have always been interested in Yosemite for many years, and the park has a long history of this many people showing up just to visit it. Yosemite Valley was home to the Ahwahneechee people for thousands of years before settlers had even arrived. The Ahwahneechee were already there when they first met outsiders in the 1800s. They had named the valley Ahwahnee, but the settlers mispronounced it Yosemite. Somehow. How did you mess that up? I don't know. Anyways, during the California Gold Rush in 1851, the U.S. Army wanted to clear the valley, leading to a conflict with the Ahwahneechee. Chief Tanaya led the tribe in resisting, resulting in the Mariposa Wars, and eventually the Native Americans were captured and moved to a reservation. This ended the tribal habituation of Yosemite Valley and began the era of the settlers. Before the Mariposa Wars, fur traders visited the Sierra Nevada, but they didn't explore Yosemite Valley because they thought it was too difficult to pass through. The first recorded non-Native American visitor was in 1849, just 2 years before the conflicts with the native tribes began. During the gold rush of the 1850s, miners came to the area and some were killed in clashes with the army. After the tribe was moved, tourists slowly started coming back into the valley. Many were just photographers and artists who wanted to capture the beauty of the wilderness. Journalists wrote about the valley's majesty, and there were exhibitions and sketches, and as well as photos to show Americans what Yosemite was like. But then again, if you've ever taken a picture of anything in your life, photos just never really do it justice. Galen Clark was one of the first settlers to make a permanent home in Yosemite, and he lived in Mariposa Grove and Wawona Valley, which is surrounded by giant sequoia trees and was cut off by the Merced River until a bridge was built in 1857. Clark built a pioneer village with cabins, a hotel, and ranch for tourists, though. Today, the Pioneer Village is a historic site, and the oldest buildings are preserved for tourists. About 160 people live in Wawona all year, but more come during the tourist season when cabins are available for rent. Galen Clark saw the potential of this area and worked to preserve the wilderness for future generations. He played a key role in making Yosemite a national park. As more settlers and tourists came to Yosemite, people actually started kind of worrying about the damage that they were doing to nature, which was pretty surprising around this time frame. Thomas Starr King, a minister, and Frederick Law Olmsted, an architect, were among those who saw threats to the wilderness. They wrote letters in the newspaper expressing their concerns, and Charles Watson also took photos of Yosemite showing its beauty and untouched landscape, which, if you know anything about humans, means it'll probably be touched pretty soon. In 1864, Abraham Lincoln saw the dangers that humans and their activities posed to Yosemite. He signed a bill called the Yosemite Grant, giving Yosemite Valley and Mariposa Grove to California. Horrible idea. This was the first step to protect the land. Galen Clark became the guardian of Yosemite Valley, but he faced many challenges in his role. And if you know anything about me in California, why would you give California anything? So as Galen Clark worked to make Yosemite Valley more welcoming to visitors, another champion for preservation joined the cause, John Muir. By 1890, Muir was a well-known naturalist and conservationist who had spent years studying Yosemite Valley. Seeing the ongoing damage caused by farm animals and humans, Muir launched a campaign to protect Yosemite as a national park. The Yosemite Act of 1890 was a step forward in saving the land. It protected the trees, minerals, and natural formations of the national park. However, the park only covered areas outside of the valley and Sequoia Grove. Galen Clark, still serving as guardian along with the army, tried to stop poaching and other harmful activities that actually were taking place in the park. But because part of the valley was controlled by California, see, misstep, there were missed chances to fully protect it. Muir kept fighting to unite Yosemite under the care of the US government. Muir's persistence, though, would pay off in 1903 when he camped with Theodore Roosevelt in Yosemite and convinced the nature-loving president to take action. In 1906, Bill made all of Yosemite the property of the U.S. government, ensuring its protection and preservation. In 1960, the National Park Service was established to oversee Yosemite's preservation efforts. By 1920, campgrounds near the lakes and the Wawona Tunnel were finished, making it easier and faster for people to visit the park. This also provided better accommodations for many visitors. That same year, educational programs started to teach visitors about the park's natural wonders and why it is important to protect the land and wildlife. In 1927, Yosemite welcomed an artist who would become iconic, Ansel Adams. He lived and worked in the park for 50 years, capturing its beauty through his photography. His first Yosemite photographs were printed in 1927, marking the start of an incredible career. Adams' work brought appreciation to Yosemite and the surrounding area, showcasing its magnificence through his expertly crafted images. The Ansel Adams Gallery still stands in Yosemite today, preserving its legacy. Additional measures to protect Yosemite were also implemented, starting with the Wilderness Act of 1964. The act designated certain sections of the park as highly protected, preventing any development and allowing nature to just completely go untouched and thrive there and anything contained within. These highly protected areas make up 89% of the park, including 2 wilderness areas named after Ansel Adams and John Muir. Even with the extensive protection, Yosemite still remains a popular destination for visitors. Besides its breathtaking views, the park is also home to abundant wildlife. Grizzly and black bears are commonly seen throughout, though many animals were nearly wiped out due to hunting and trapping in the park's early days. In recent years, the Park Service has worked diligently to reintroduce and restore various species. Some of these have been bighorn sheep, peregrine falcons, and great gray owls. These efforts to help maintain the park's natural balance and diversity for future generations to enjoy does also seem to be kind of paying off. Yosemite's history is diverse and fascinating, making it an integral part of the American landscape. It's a cherished landmark preserved for both present and future generations to enjoy. And as you look at the beauty that is Yosemite, it's also worth pausing and acknowledging and really thanking the individuals who fought tirelessly to maintain the valley's natural splendor. Their efforts have allowed ordinary citizens the opportunity to marvel at nature's wonders. Yosemite National Park serves as a timeless reminder of the passage of time and holds the promise of a future filled with breathtaking landscapes and unforgettable experiences. Tanaya Lake gets its name from Chief Tanaya, the last Native American chief in Yosemite. In the 1850s, armed settlers attempted to force Chief Tanaya and his tribe out of the valley to relocate them to the reservation near Fresno. During the conflict, Chief Tanaya's son was killed, fueling his anger and leading him to condemn the settlers or anyone who would enter the canyon. This is the topic that we are discussing today, at least after that brief history lesson. Even John Muir, known as the father of national parks, faced Tanaya Canyon's dangers when he was knocked unconscious in a fall. The canyon has been seen to many rescues, earning it the nickname the Bermuda Triangle of the Yosemite, at least among park rangers. While park officials acknowledge the stories and legends surrounding Tanaya Canyon, they have no official position on them. Now, one of the mysteries we're going to discuss today is the one concerning Elmer. According to a blog post by a Yosemite park ranger known as AR, campers in Yosemite Valley have been perplexed by the question, where is Elmer? Since at least the 1930s, Elmer is a particular phenomenon observed during the summer nights. Although its origin remains unclear and the National Park Service has not officially recognized it. AR explains that when someone calls out for Elmer, it's typically an adult male hoping for a response from another camper. This call is often met with an equally loud and unpleasant response. Soon, children join in, seemingly influenced by the social pressure of some primal instinct. When asked why they yell Elmer, most children respond that they did it because everyone else was doing it. Meanwhile, the person who initiated the call might say it's because they used to do it when they were young. In 1961, park ranger Louis G. Karcher attempted to shed light on the mystery of Elmer in an article for Yosemite Nature Notes. Some campers believed Elmer to be a bear frequenting the campgrounds for food, while others thought it was a name given to an elusive creature by the children. However, Karcher and later ranger AR found these explanations lacking. In the 1970s, Henry W. Splitter investigated Elmer sightings further. He discovered that Elmer was a World War I nickname for a soldier, and the phrase, "Where is Elmer?" may have spread to civilians after the war. more. The release of a comedy movie, Elmer the Great, in 1933, featuring characters calling out for Elmer in the darkness, could have inspired someone to start the trend in Yosemite. Another account by longtime Yosemite camper Francis P. Robinson recounts a different origin for the story of Elmer. In 1937, a young man named Elmer missed his engagement celebration while camping with his family. Concerned family members and other campers repeatedly called out for him until he returned, feeling ashamed. A ranger scolded his family for their behavior, and this incident was reported to Yosemite historian Shirley Sargent. In the old days in the 1930s, a guy named Henry talked with a guy named Edward who had a job bringing water to folks in the camping site of Yosemite. Edward didn't just snap on a tap, he had to lug buckets from the river to the camp spots before there was plumbing. Then in 1937, some kids started calling Edward Elmer. Maybe it was because of the famous movie called him Elmer the Great, but who really knows? The mystery of Elmer will probably keep us kind of scratching our heads forever, but if you're camping in Yosemite and you hear Elmer whispered in the dark, don't get too freaked out. Then, that's just kind of one of those, it's not really like that big of a deal, but there are some that are a little worse. So let's talk about the missing people. Yosemite today is shaped by a lot of big rocks falling down. It doesn't happen all the time, but when it does, it's serious. People can get hurt or worse, especially when it rains or snows. Water can make the rocks extremely slippery and then make them fall. Places like Camp 5 and 6 are extra risky when it rains. Yosemite has a ton of hiking trails, in fact more than 800 miles, but with so many trails, sometimes people tend to get lost. Since way back in 1909, there have been more than 30 times when people went missing in Yosemite. Each year, park rangers and search teams will deal with around 250 emergencies within the park. In a book called Off the Wall, Death in Yosemite by Michael P. Gigleri and Charles R. Butch Farabee, there's a story about F.P. Shepard. He was a young jeweler living in California. One day in 1909, he went on a hike in Yosemite National Park. His plan was to walk from Glacier Point to Sentinel Dome. But when the weather turned bad and the fog thick, his friends turned back. FP decided to keep going alone. Sadly, that was the last time anyone saw him. People think FP may have fallen off a cliff into a deep canyon or just got lost in the fog. A big group around 25 soldiers then went on to search for him, and as they looked all over, even near Illilouette Falls in the immersed river, they found his gloves back at his lodge. They had hoped the gloves would actually sort of help the bloodhounds find him by smelling him, but even with all the searching and the help of the bloodhounds, they never found any signs of FP, and it's still a mystery as to what happened to him. In another sad tale from Yosemite, there's a Dion Nam, a 20-year-old medical student from England. He was studying at Cambridge University, and one summer he rented a cabin in Yosemite. On July 24, 1972, he was seen in Curry Village. He asked for directions to Half Dome. Dion left his clothes and stuff in the cabin, but it's thought he took his Pentax 35mm camera with him. Chief Ranger Jack Moorhead said that they searched everywhere, rides, trails, backcountry spots, but they found nothing. He worried Dion may have wandered off the trail, got hurt, and nobody could find him in such a big park. Dion's family were also worried, so they put out an ad in the paper asking him to get in touch. Their concern began to grow because he hadn't written to them, but even after all this time, nobody was able to find what happened to Dion. Another mysterious case, there is a Stacy Aris, a 14-year-old high school student who went camping with her dad George in Yosemite in 1981. They joined others on mules for a trip to Sunrise High Sierra Camp. They got there on July 17th at around 3 p.m., and as Stacy settled in, she had a shower and then went for a 1.5-mile hike to Sunrise Lake to take pictures. Gerald Stewart, a 77-year-old from the camp, went with her but got tired and then walked back. Evidently, Stacy kept going. The last person to see Stacy was a guide leading a ride to Sunrise. He saw her standing on a rock off the trail, but when she didn't come back, she was reported missing. Park rangers and volunteers, helicopters, and search dogs, all about 100 people in all, looked for her, but they could not find her. The search dogs were good, but they also need luck with the wind to actually kind of find somebody. It's not as precise as you might imagine, but Ranger Tom Hacker said it was like she disappeared without a trace. Even the Sierra Madre search and a rescue team couldn't find her, so the search would ultimately be called off, but they still kept an eye out during routine patrols. Park officials said that it wasn't foul play and Stacy just might have left the park. They even thought maybe there was a possibility she may have found a road, but despite all the searching, no one has ever found Stacy. There's no mention of finding her camera or lens cap either. Ranger Bob Johnson summed it up by saying they just didn't find anything important. In 1988, there's a story of Timothy John Barnes, a 24-year-old from California. He went for a day hike to Tanaya Lake to Poly Dome Lakes in Yosemite on July 5th. The last time anyone saw him was around 9 a.m. near Murphy Creek Trailhead. But when he didn't come back later on that afternoon, his friends reported him missing the next day. The park went into high gear to find Timothy. Over 170 people, along with helicopters and search dogs, looked for 7 days. They used specialized equipment like infrared cameras, but they couldn't find any sign of him. Another spokesperson said that they didn't even find a single clue about where he might have been. The guy just literally vanished. Eventually, they had to scale back the search because they just couldn't find any evidence of where he may have gone. They said that they would keep looking if they got any new leads, but so far, nothing has ever been turned up. Timothy's disappearance remains a mystery to this day. Then, in 1998, a hiker named David Paul Morrison went missing while solo hiking to Half Dome in Yosemite. It was Memorial Day weekend, and David, who was 28, knew his way around the trails, and he planned to meet his girlfriend later. But when night came and David didn't show up, his girlfriend started getting really worried about him and then told park authorities. She called David's parents to let them know that he was missing. David was last seen with the group talking to hikers near Yosemite Valley. He asked them how to get to Half Dome and mentioned the thick clouds. The hike to Half Dome was pretty tough, about 14 to 16 miles with some fairly steep parts. The next day, David was still missing. A big search party of 75 people along with 5 dog teams and a helicopter looked for him, and even David's family joined in. But bad weather and other rescues would slow things down, and despite everyone's efforts, they could not find David. After a week of searching, they had to stop because they hadn't found any signs of him. David's disappearance is still a mystery like the others to this day. In 2000, Kira Burke, a skilled hiker from Ireland, went missing while hiking in Yosemite National Park from April 4th to the 6th. The last time anyone saw him was on April 5th at Curry Village, where he might have been heading out for a solo hike. They're not really sure. And this information comes from the park spokesperson, Christine Cowles. Kieran called his wife, Mino, the day that he disappeared, and that was the last anyone had heard from him. On April 6th, park staff noticed that he hadn't checked out and then reported him missing. The weather was nice at first, but later in the week, storms brought snow and rain, making it harder to search for Kieran. His tent had still all of its stuff in it, and his rental car was found in the parking lot of Curry Village. After 12 days, they had to stop the search because the area was just too big. They said that they'd start again if they knew where Kieran was going in the park. Kieran's brother, Lorcan, then flew from Ireland to help search. He said he couldn't bear the thought of not finding Kieran and then felt like he had been searching for him forever. But even with all of their efforts, Kieran was never found. See, this is the thing about this type of area. You really got to understand when you're dealing with this much space, you can have infrared, you can have cameras, you can have helicopters and dogs and people and everything, but if you don't know what direction they're heading or what kind of headspace they were in or even what kind of animal was in the area, it could be extremely tough to find anyone. In 2000, another hiker named Ruthann Rupert went missing in Yosemite National Park, and she was 49 and apparently loved hiking and backpacking. Ruthann arrived at the park on August 8th for a 30-mile backpacking trip. The last time anyone saw her again was on August 14th, either at the Yosemite Medical Clinic or Curry Village. She went to the clinic because she had an infection, but when she came back, her hiking buddies had already left. Ruthann's family reported her missing on September 11th when she didn't come back from her trip. The park spokesperson at that time was Ray Santos, and he said Ruthann was last seen at the clinic on August 14th, and she checked into a tent at Curry Village later that day. Her purple Kia rental car, packed with all of her stuff, was found at Curry Village on September 11th. Some campers said Ruthann talked about exploring Indian Canyon or Snow Creek Trail near Yosemite Falls, but nobody saw her leave camp. Search teams then looked for her every day using dogs and helicopters, but they couldn't find her. They had to slow down their search because so much time had passed that it kind of became a question of if this was actually going to be something that was worth the investment of the time. And it always is worth investing time to search for somebody, but you're talking about the amount of people and the amount of effort. If they've been gone for such a long period of time, the chances of finding somebody are very, very slim. But Santos said that they didn't know exactly where to look, which makes it worse, but they were focusing on areas where people usually have trouble. In 2008, they found Ruthann's backpack along a hiking route from Yosemite Falls to Foresta, but they still haven't found her. It's really a sad story, and to this day, Ruthann remains missing. Then in 2011, George Planka, a 30-year-old, went missing while hiking with his church group on Upper Yosemite Falls Trail. On June 17th, during their return trip, he got separated from the group. They thought that he had gone ahead, but when he didn't come back, they reported him missing. The weather was actually mild that weekend, so search and rescue teams, including about 105 people, dogs, and again, helicopters, searched for George. They apparently looked everywhere but couldn't find him. Even after almost a week of searching, they didn't find any clues as to where he may have gone either. His bank account hasn't been used since he disappeared, and they haven't found any of his stuff or just any trace of what may have happened to him. The authorities haven't found also any evidence of foul play either. Fortunately, George is still missing. In 2016, Peter Jackson, a 74-year-old hiker who was in great shape, disappeared while on a trip to Yosemite as well. On September 17, 2016, he told his son that he was going to Yosemite National Park. He was going to be staying at White Wolf Campground until September 21st, but then never came back. Peter planned to camp and hike for at least a few days, and he was supposed to leave, again, on September 21st to come back. On September 26th, people realized that he was missing. The last time anyone heard from Peter was on September 17th when he messaged his son. His car was still at the campground. They searched for him, but on October 2nd, they had to stop because of bad weather and no new clues. Scott Gammon, who works at the park, said they tried hard to find Peter, but just couldn't. In August of 2019, they did find his backpack in Yosemite, but they still haven't found him. In 2021, Joel Thomason, a 31-year-old hiker and Army reservist, went missing during a solo hiking trip. He started his journey on September 6th, planning to hike from Hetch Hetchy to Lake Eleanor for fishing and return by September 9th. However, he might have extended his trip to Cherry Lake or explored other areas of the Grand Canyon of the Tuolumne River. A park ranger said that he saw him near a steep part of O'Shaughnessy Dam on the first day, which was the last time anyone saw Joel. When Joel didn't come back after 2 days, as when he was planning to return, park officials declared him missing. They searched using helicopters, boats, and again, search dogs. Flyers went up along highways, but by October 2021, the search had slowed down. Joel's dad, Stephen, thought Joel might have gone off trail because of his military experience and knowing the area well. Joel's friends had passed away recently, so he went hiking to clear his mind. His dad said that it wasn't unusual for Joel to do this when he was dealing with loss, but despite all the efforts, Joel hasn't been found. A memorial service was held for him in December of 2021. Sad ending to Joel's story, and his remains are still missing. To actually have a safe and fun trip to Yosemite National Park, there are a few things to keep in mind. First, you want to always check the weather before you go and pack accordingly. Make sure you have the right gear and enough supplies for your adventure, and while Yosemite is super popular, there are tons of amazing spots to explore in the park where you don't go missing. Even though you really don't need reservations to get into Yosemite, it's smart to book ahead for like lodging, camping, and backpacking as traffic will be crazy, so you want to kind of get there early. But when you're there, remember to respect the wildlife because it will eat you. Don't try to get too close or feed them, and be careful not to disturb their homes. Keep your food stored properly and clean up after yourself to keep the park beautiful for everyone. Now, here's the real thing. While Yosemite is stunning with its towering cliffs, clear lakes, and beautiful waterfalls, there's a reminder here of nature's power and unpredictability. You respect the park, be cautious, and enjoy the incredible experience it has to offer, but you need to understand something about bears. Now, you can slip down the side of a mountain and fall into a lake, which they will not find you because you will sink to the bottom and you will be eaten by the fish in that thing, or in the river, you'll just be washed away. Hundreds of miles, they won't really know where to look. The point is, though, this. Bears will absolutely grab you and drag you back. You need to basically stay strapped. And I'm not talking, look, if you've ever seen a grizzly bear before, I'm not saying like, oh yeah, have a little like pea shooter 9mm. You need something like 357 Magnum for that type of deal. Like, you need to be going out there understanding that, and that needs to obviously be the last resort. You need to carry bear mace, which is much more preferable because you don't want to just start blowing away the wildlife. But if it comes down between you and it needs to be it every single time. So just saying. But anyhow, I'm sure PETA's going to be very angry with what I just said, that it doesn't matter. I want to thank you guys for watching. Be careful if you go to Yosemite. There's a lot of people that go missing and then they just disappear and they're never seen again, obviously, as just explained. I want to thank you guys for listening to this story and me talking, and I want to thank my patrons real quick. First, at the Literal Wendigo tier, we have Grayson West, Stupid Fox, Trash Panda in a Trench Coat. Thank you guys. At the Eyewitness to the Event tier, we have Beaver Malaga, Wet Skeleton. At the First Hand Accounts tier, we have Cody Cherry Drake and Yeeps. And at the Second Hand account, we have Bianca, Kanan Johnson, Fred Rush, and Troy. And to the rest of my patrons, I appreciate y'all's support as well. It goes a long way towards helping the channel and is greatly appreciated. All right, so I had somebody comment saying that my outros are very abrupt. Yes, they are. That's how I like them. Thanks for watching. Bye.